Hello and welcome to the American Council on Exercise live class presentation series. My name is Jackie Crockford and I will be your host for today's presentation. Today we're going to be talking about training youth athletes. A lot of information to discuss, and for that we have our presenter, Melissa Myers. Hi.
Hey Jackie.
So Melissa, you are the co-owner of 1RM Performance here in San Diego. Melissa is also an ACE Pro athlete herself. Tell us why you like working with youth athletes and exactly the type of youth athlete, what that means for us today.
Sure. I work with junior high, high school, and college athletes, a few younger kids, and basically prepare kids for either high school or college or just general fitness.
Okay, great. So for today's presentation, we are going to be working with one of your youth athletes. And tell us a little bit about what you enjoy about working with this specific group, that pre-collegiate kind of high school age.
Yeah, me and Jackie were talking about this before. We both thought about college strength and conditioning, did that, and really enjoyed working with college athletes, but it's really fun to see a junior high athlete or a high school athlete just progress over 3 years, 4 years, 8 years, and see how they can get faster and stronger and more confident. And it's a really fun process to see them either go to college and play a sport or just go to college and be interested in strength and conditioning.
Great, perfect. So we are going to be working with Lauren today, and we'll have her out in just a little while. Prior to that, before we get into all the information today, just a reminder, you are listening today for free and viewing this presentation for free, so thank you for taking the time. If you would like to receive CECs for today's presentation, we'll be talking about that towards the end, but you can view towards the bottom of your viewer on YouTube. There is a link there that will lead you to accessing those CECs, so feel free to click on that. Also, if you have questions for Melissa as we go through the presentation today, use your chat bar, which is on the right-hand side of your viewer, and I'll be monitoring those throughout the presentation. So feel free and type in your question or any feedback that you have about today's presentation. So you ready? Let's get started?
Sounds good.
All right.
Thanks, Jackie. So training junior high, high school, and college athletes is a tricky job. When the athletes get to college, their schedules are very set. They're preparing for one event. Where our younger athletes, our elementary kids, our junior high kids, our high school athletes have a lot of different competitions. They may play several sports, or they may play one sport and play it all year round and have to peak at different times. So the demands of training youth athletes is a little different than training college athletes. There's lots of things for us to think about. We have to think about the recovery time. They may be practicing 3 or 4 hours a day. They might be having a ton of homework. They might not be eating enough food. They just might not be sleeping enough. So when we are designing a program for our youth athletes, we need to keep all of those things in mind. So there's a couple other things that we should think about when we are programming for our athletes and thinking about how do we program for a kid who we need to progress them for 4 years or maybe 8 years. We need to think about some physical aspects, meaning some of these kids aren't going to be through puberty. They might be in elementary school, and so they haven't grown taller or larger. So they're pre-puberty time. We need to think about some mental considerations. Their prefrontal cortex hasn't fully developed until the age of 25, meaning their thought processes aren't going to be as fine-tuned as our college athletes. And so we are going to need help with some of the planning and the organization of structuring a program for them. So if you take a look at this slide, there's a lot of information on here. So we're going to kind of pick apart a few things from this. If you notice across the top, they have chronological age. So you go from 2 years old up to 21 years old. And then if you notice on the bottom, we are talking about the training structure of the program. And so as our athletes are younger, our programs as sports performance coaches can be a little more unstructured, meaning we're going to work a little bit more on some fundamental movement skills and not as much on the sport-specific skills. So if you notice in the diagram, you can see the FMS. Some of us know that as the functional movement screen, and here it refers to fundamental movement skills, meaning we're teaching our athletes to move laterally, linearly, and in a variety of different planes. If you notice along the bottom again, we progress into more structure as we get to our college age athletes. So later in the presentation, we're going to kind of talk about how do we have an unstructured program, but how do we also add structure to the program. in the middle of the slide, you can kind of see our different variables. And so we have mobility and agility and speed and power and strength. And all this diagram is saying, this is a theory, it's a working theory, is that there are certain ages where athletes can develop more optimally. Meaning, when they're younger, we probably want to develop more mobility and agility and speed. And then as they're progressing and getting older, we can increase some power and do a little more focus on their sport-specific skills. So, moving on to training goals for our youth athletes. Like we talked about with our developmental periods, we have our mental considerations to think about. And so training goals for athletes, some athletes will come in and they won't know exactly what their goals are. So our job as sports performance coaches is to help them with those goals. We can categorize those into a general training goal and then more of a specific training goal. And so we might have a variety of these. We might have a volleyball player that comes in and wants to increase their vertical or increase their lateral quickness. They might be a libero, a defender. We might have a football player who comes in who needs to be more powerful or be quicker on his feet. And so our job as sports performance coaches is to take some of those goals and then make them a little bit more specific. And so we could set a timeline for them for maybe like 2 to 3 months and increase their vertical by 2 inches. We can also, fine tune it where it's like, hey, this year we want to make JV basketball or we want to make varsity basketball, and then develop a program, a year-long program or 4-year-long program where we can help them get to those goals. So within those goals, like that diagram we looked at before, we have to develop these athletes potentially for 4, 8, 10 years. And so our fundamental movement skills, like we talked about, are our linear movement, our lateral movement, our transverse movement, and then a combination of all of these. And so as we're working with Lauren later today, or later in this presentation, we're going to kind of cover these and talk about how we can program those movements into a workout or into a training program. So if you've been working with ACE in the past or some other organizations, you've probably seen this slide. So look at your slide and you can see stability and mobility. And so as you progress from the ground up to your head, we want to add stability in certain joints and mobility in others. And so as we're working with or going through a workout with Lauren, we're going to kind of address some of these things and talk about how we can add stability and mobility into her workout and also how you can use it in your own workouts with your athletes. So we kind of talked about this a little before with our multi-directions. But these are our pillars. If you look at your slide, these are the pillars that you're going to think about with your strength program. So we want to think about speed, power, strength, and endurance in almost every one of our workouts. We're going to talk about periodization in a little bit, but with these principles, these are our goals for our athletes. We want our athletes to be faster, we want them to be more powerful, we want them to be stronger, and then we want them to have endurance or to recover faster. And so within those things, we can break those down a little bit farther. And so which we will do. But with speed, we can have linear speed, we can have change direction speed, we can have lateral speed. We're going to go through a piece of that today. And then with power, same thing. Depending on our athlete, we're going to want either more horizontal power or vertical power. As we said, Lauren's a volleyball player, so she's obviously going to need a little more vertical power. We take a baseball player, a rugby player, a football player, something like that. We're going to want more horizontal power because we are producing force horizontally. Okay, then we move into strength. We're going to talk about this a lot later, but strength is one of those fundamental movement skills that every athlete needs, and that so many things are going to improve if we can improve the strength of our athletes. And then endurance, same thing. We're going to talk about that in a little bit, but that's one of the variables that we can train depending on our athletes. So with periodization, we could spend hours talking about periodization or days talking about periodization. The most important thing to remember with our youth athletes is that periodization isn't going to look like it is with our college and our professional athletes. That's for one specific reason. These kids are competing in lots of competitions and in lots of sports. And so in order to periodize, we got to take in, like we talked about, the demands of their sport and the demands of their daily living. So our college athletes generally are preparing for one event. Our professional athletes are preparing for one event over 4 years, sometimes for our Olympic level athletes. Where our high school kids, we need to be able to periodize their program, meaning have fluctuations in their volumes and their intensities to have them peak at certain times. A traditional periodization program, we do linear periodization. And so if you look at a volleyball schedule on your slide, we can see in the blue that would be a club volleyball season. Meaning you look at that and they're training for, 9 months out of the year for club volleyball. The peak is in July, and so our goal with their program is that they are going to build progressively until they peak in July. But before that, they're going to have competitions where they need to see slight peaks, and then they need a large one in July. From there, they go straight into high school season, and they need to peak sometime in October, maybe a little bit more in November. But as you can see, that's a full year of training. So with periodization, like I said, a linear periodization program is a very common program that a lot of college coaches use. Some coaches are changing it to do more of a block periodization or an undulating periodization, which is kind of what we're going to focus on today. So a linear periodization is characterized by times of high volume at the start and lower intensity, and then as you go during the season, you're going to decrease the volume and increase the intensity. So with a periodization program that we use at our gym and we use a lot with our youth athletes is more of an undulating periodization. And so you are taking into account those times of, let's say, finals week, or so those times where there's high homework, high stress, and so we can periodize around that, and so that we might have a little bit lower volume, lower intensity in those weeks. And then we are taking that into account so that they are going to peak at their highest times where they need to peak. So like we said with Lauren, she needs to peak in July and then maybe in October-ish. So we're going to move into more of the active part of our presentation. Obviously, most of us here are sports performance coaches, and so we know the importance of a dynamic warm-up. But when we're doing a dynamic warm-up, we can really focus on a few things. We can ingrain movement patterns. So I want you to think of, instead of the old school dynamic warm-up or warm-up is like jumping jacks, running, skipping, that sort of thing. That's great, but we can also add some things to our dynamic warm-up that we can focus on ingraining our movement patterns. Like that diagram we saw before, we can focus on adding stability and adding mobility. And we can address weaknesses in our athletes. So let's say an athlete has a valgus collapse, which you'll see with Lauren, she has a little bit of that. We can address that in our warm-up, and not only in our strength portion, but we can, start doing it at the very start of our workouts. So Lauren, come on out. This is Lauren. She's a volleyball player. Okay, so first thing she's gonna do is we're gonna get her warm, obviously. So we're gonna talk about some pieces of the dynamic warm-up. She is gonna stand right where she's at, and she's just gonna start moving into a forward and a reverse lunge. So while she's doing that, you'll have a chance to watch her some more. But if you look at your diagram, or on your slide, you can see in the dynamic warm-up, we have linear movement, lateral movement, and then multi-planar movement. And so we're not going to go through all of those things because we don't have a ton of time today. But we're going to go through a few of those things. So Lauren's going to keep moving here. She's, a high-level athlete, so she kind of knows what she's doing. But if you look at the slide, we have forward and reverse lunge. That's what she's doing. Our younger athletes maybe aren't going to combine these movements. They may be doing an inline lunge where she's not moving at all and working on some stability in her ankle joints. Our elite level athletes may add something like a jump to it, or carrying a load on the side of her body or something like that. Okay, so she's getting warmed up linearly. It's going to help with some of our speed work. Are you getting warm, Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. She is going to stay right there. I'm going to hand her this band. So linear movement, like I said, as a coach, she's going to put that on her ankles. As a coach, I would recommend looking at your program, making a list of things that would classify in linear movement, and saying these are exercises or drills we could add to the dynamic warm-up to work on some of those things. So now we're going to move into a little bit of lateral movement. So she's going to bend her knees. She's going to keep her feet facing forward. Some athletes like to turn their toes outwards because it's easier. So for those athletes, cue them to turn their toes in a little bit. We don't want them pigeon-toed, but those type of athletes, you could say, turn your toes in a little bit and it will help them at least keep their feet in a line. So Lauren's progressing into a little bit of lateral movement, working on some glute activation, some hamstring activation. She's doing a good job. So we have some variations here. She could straighten her legs. With this, we want to cue flexing the quads, keeping the legs fairly locked out, not hyperextended. We don't want her to do that. But we're getting her moving a little bit. And like I said, there's a lot of options for this. She's going to keep moving through this. We could progress her into some shuffles, but we're going to save that for some of our speed change direction work. We could have her do some lateral lunges. Like I said, I would recommend making a list and thinking, maybe picking 2-3 exercises from each list and adding those to your warm-up. Okay, Lauren, you good there?
Yes.
Take that off. Lauren's a volleyball player. So today in the workout, you're going to lay on your side. Today in the workout, most of the things we're going to address are towards her as a volleyball player. So one of the things with a volleyball player is that their thoracic mobility is sometimes not very good. They're very immobile in their rib cage area. So she's going to do a little bit of multi-planar training. This is called thoracic mobility. Some things you can think about with your athletes. We put a foam roller between their knees and make them squeeze this. We want to think hips stay grounded here, and then she's getting all the rotation from her upper body. So in ideal world, her shoulders are both going to get flat on the ground. You see when I left my hand here, she wanted to shift out of this position because it made it a little bit easier. But we're going to make sure she stays there. Ideally, both shoulders get flat. Lauren's shoulders don't get flat because she's a volleyball player. So it's very common. Okay, we're getting warm, Lauren?
Yes.
So like I said, many different things you can do for her multi-planar training. Thoracic mobility is a big one we use with our rotational athletes. Give me 2 more each side, Lauren. All right, you can stand up. Go grab a drink of water real fast. So moving into from dynamic warm-up, like I said, we could add a lot of things to that. We're going to move into a little bit of speed. Depending on our training day, we may either do speed or power next. Okay, so the order of exercises we're going to do right now is a very common order we do at our gym. Today we're going to do speed first because she's only going to do a little short period of speed, and then we're going to follow it with power. So with speed, one of the first things you need to do is actually assess your athlete's speed. There are several different tests that are very well known in the strength and conditioning community. A 40-yard test is going to obviously test your speed, your full-out speed. Your 10-yard test will assess your acceleration. We probably use the 10-yard test more than the 40-yard test because for most athletes, acceleration is more important than their full speed, depending on the sport, but most athletes, this is true. Pro agility is a very common test we test, which is a 5-10-5, a shuttle. And Lauren's going to do kind of a lateral movement drill today. She's not going to do the pro agility, but very common test to test change direction speed. T-test is also a very common test for that. So Lauren's going to come back out here, and we're going to start getting her doing some speed. So let's get her doing a little run and back pedal. As you can see, our gym size here, not super large, okay? So doing her 40-yard test, not possible in here. So she is doing a little bit of sprint and back pedal. She's just learning to change direction here, working on her acceleration, deceleration. She's looking good. Give me 2 more, Lauren. So like we said, Lauren plays volleyball, so she doesn't actually have to run a lot, which is good. Lauren likes running, but that's a good thing for some athletes, okay? So she doesn't spend a lot of time running. She needs to accelerate quickly. Let's put this here. So as you can see on the slide, we go from linear to lateral to change direction speed. Okay, linear, we're going to do some running form with this, what we're going to do with this resisted band. Lateral, we're going to do some shuffle work. And then change direction, we're going to add to the shuffle, and we're going to do a little bit of a reactive component. So Lauren is going to do a full sprint to that cone. She's going to work on her running form though, okay? So she's going to work on knee drive. She's going to drive those knees even higher. She's going to work on a good arm action here. Good, and then slowly walk back. Okay, let's do 2 more, Lauren. So we want her to make a good contact with the floor. Drive the knees even higher. Good. We'll give her a little longer breather on this one. Don't go yet. Okay, she's ready. Good. Make this the best one, Lauren. Really good. Good. Catch your breath. So if we were doing this in an actual training program, we would take more rest in between, obviously, because we're working on speed. She needs to make sure she's recovering in between. We would probably add to this too. So let's say we did a resisted drill. We may do some assisted work as well. The important thing is to look at what your athletes need in their sport. And like we said, Lauren doesn't need a lot of speed. She needs to be able to get off the net fast and get back quickly in a very small radius, probably within the distance of these cones. Okay, you ready for some lateral movement?
Yes.
Started this cone here. She's just going to start with shuffling down and back. Good. So a shuffle in volleyball, very common movement. Okay, she needs to be explosive with her first step. She needs to be quick. That's great. Do one more, Lauren. And she'll rest. With your athletes at home, you need to analyze their sport and then analyze the movement that they should be doing for their sport. So Lauren's training, she's very, very condensed because she doesn't need a lot of long distance sprinting. Okay? So, like I said, we're going to work on a little bit of reactive drill with her shuffling. So she's going to start. Does that look like that's middle to you? Yeah. Somewhere in there? Okay. She's going to shuffle. She's going to react to my cues. You can do this in lots of different ways. Some athletes don't react well to rights and lefts. For some reason, some of my kids get confused and don't know left and right. Lauren's smart though, so she'll be fine with this. If those kids, you may want to change cone color and say like red and green, so we have a red cone and a green cone. But Lauren will be good with this. You ready?
Yes.
Right. Left. 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 And rest. Good. So lots of variations to this drill, obviously. We could have a cone in front. We could have a cone behind. The important part when you're programming for your athletes is take the demands of the sport and program towards that. How long do you think you went, Lauren?
10, 15
10 seconds. Okay, let's say 10 seconds. A typical volleyball point lasts somewhere between 10 and 15 seconds, okay? Recovery time is somewhere around the same, 15 to 20 to 30 seconds, somewhere in there. So if we're doing this for Lauren, we would take that into account. We took rest a little too long, didn't we? We should go again, okay? So same thing, ready? Left. Right. 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 And rest. Good. Go grab a drink of water, Lauren. So Lauren's doing a great job. Let's put this here. So change the direction. Like I said, lots of different drills you could use for that. Look at your sport, analyze their movement, and then program according to that. So from speed, we're going to move into power. Power for Lauren, very important. Power for most of our athletes, very important. Some coaches will argue that power is believed to be one of the biggest predictors of athletic success. So that I think that is a big cue to us as coaches, that power is something that we should really be focusing on. The important part with power is that we're recovering in between. The way our energy systems work is that if we are truly training towards power, we need a good rest in between, and so we can truly train for power again. Otherwise, we're training for more endurance. Which is not what we're doing with power. So with power, if you take a look at your slide, we're going to cover a few things in those. We separate power generally into vertical, horizontal, and then rotational or lateral power. So depending on the athlete, we will focus on different things. Today, we're going to focus more on vertical power with Lauren. She's going to do some variations to some box jumps. She's not going to do any horizontal today. And then she's going to work a little bit on upper body power with some med ball tosses. Lauren, you ready? Yes. Okay. Grab the small box. I'll grab the big box. So if you're doing these at home, we use the soft foam plyo boxes. We don't use these very often. Not saying these are bad, but the soft foam plyo boxes for some of our athletes will get kids that go like this and stare at the box for like 5 minutes and won't actually jump onto the box. Okay, so we're hoping Lauren has no disasters today, but it is possible. Okay, so the first thing she's going to do is she's going to jump off of 2 feet and she's going to land on, let's do 2 to 2 first. We got to get her warmed up. So she's jumping off of 2 feet and she's landing on 2 feet. So I don't know if you can see from the camera angle there, but sometimes Lauren gets a little bit of valgus collapse. This box is also a little narrow, and so you might see her knees fluctuating a little bit inside. So something we know that we need to address in her program, and we work on that a little bit. Give me 2 more, Lauren, and then take a rest. So ratio. If you're programming some sort of power element into your programming, generally we do no more than 5 reps. She might have done like 6 or 7 there. But we generally do no more than 5 reps with power. And then we recover and we rest. Today we're going to take a little bit shorter recovery because we got a lot to cover. So the next thing she's going to do is actually jump off of 2 feet and she's going to land on 1 foot. So it's a good progression. I'll not talk too much while she's doing this. Good. Hey, that's okay. You're fine. So one reason why we don't use these boxes is because that happens, right? I've seen stitches in the shin because of it. Lauren is a good athlete, so she can catch herself. Okay, that's good. But those things happen, okay? She's good. Go grab a drink of water fast. So she's going to recover a little bit. So lots of variations to these vertical power movements. This is a good one from progressing 2 feet to 1 foot is a good progression going from 1 to 1. A lot of athletes aren't very comfortable on one leg. But if we can get an athlete more powerful off of one leg, then we can make them change direction quicker. We can get them jumping higher. We can just get them moving faster and better because we can teach them to properly load hamstrings and glutes. Okay, so we're going to have Lauren. You ready, Lauren? We're going to have Lauren progress a little bit. She's going to do a thing. We call it a rocket jump. I don't actually know what other people call it, but she's going to have 1 foot on the box, 1 foot off the box. She's going to jump up for maximal height. Good. That's good. Let's just do 3 on each leg. Really good. Okay, so put your foot back on the box for a sec. So when we're doing this, a lot of athletes don't know how to jump, so they don't know how to be powerful. So this is a great exercise to teach an athlete to load hamstrings and butt. Okay, so she can feel, if she's standing too vertical, I can give her a cue to lean over a little bit more, feel her hamstrings, feel her glutes loading. Okay, do it again for me, 3 more. Another thing to think about is her arm action. Using her arms to actually throw herself up. Good, really good. So we see a lot of times with our power elements is athletes want to move really fast through them. Depending on the personality of the athlete, some kids want to move like super, super fast and just want to like get through a workout really quickly. With this, we may need to set a timer out and give them 30 seconds, a minute and a half recovery in between. Another thing is, will you go back on there, Lauren, and do it the wrong way, go really fast? Some athletes want to go like really quick here. Okay, rest. Our goal with power, remember, is maximal power output. And so we should be taking our time with these exercises. Make sense? Grab a drink real fast again. So we'll move these out of the way. We're going to progress a little into rotational, we're not doing any rotational today, but we're going to cover a little bit of our upper body med ball tosses. So with rotational power, these walls look sturdy, but they're not actually sturdy, so we're not going to do it today. So she's going to do a little bit of upper body power. So come back, Lauren. So if you take a look at this ball, it's 18 pounds. Med balls are made differently. Some bounce, some don't bounce. So when you give your athlete a med ball, make sure they know what's happening so it doesn't hit them in the face. So Lauren's going to be careful of her face here. She's going to take that overhead and she's going to slam it as hard as she can. Good. Give me 2 more, Lauren. Good. Rest. Same concept. We rest in between, okay? We're not doing 20 of these or 30 of these. We could even do 2 of these for maximal power. We rest. We do it again. Are you rested?
Yes.
Are you sure? Okay. Let's do 5 more. Good. Very good. Okay. Set that over here. You can roll it against the wall and grab the basketball-looking ball. Okay. You're going to land on your back. So we're showing a few upper body power exercises because I feel like they're not addressed all the time in our programs. I feel like we, as coaches, sometimes do only lower body powerful exercises and don't do our upper body. So what she's going to do, she's going to lay there. She's going to throw it as high as she can. Oh, very nice. Good. I am the coach. As the coach, I'm going to help her out here. We don't want this to smash her in the face. Some athletes can do it on their own, but we'll do this for video purposes. Good. Give me one more. Good. Very important skill in volleyball, hitting and setting. Okay, so working on a little bit of her upper body power here. All right, go rest for a second, Lauren. So progressing from speed to power, now we're going to strength. Strength, there's a ton of things we could talk about, but we don't have a ton of time. So we're going to try to get through lower body first, upper body, and then core. So with strength, I mentioned this briefly before, but strength has the ability to improve so many other things of our athletes' performance. We can increase their coordination if they increase their strength. We can obviously improve their performance, that's our number one goal, but we can increase stability and mobility around joints. We can increase their confidence, and then maybe most importantly, we can decrease their chance of getting injured. So we're going to go into a little bit of lower body strength. So like I said before, we can break down most of our areas, our training principles, into different elements. This one we're going to do bilateral, unilateral, and then accessory work. So when Lauren comes back out, she'll be working on RDLs first. Then we're going to go to a lunge variation, and then we're going to add in some accessory work with her RDLs. Okay? And so if you look at your slide, you can see there's several different things listed. That obviously is not all the exercises that we could do. Just a few examples. So with our bilateral work, it depends on the day in her training program where she's going towards, what we're going to implement into our program. So at our gym, we normally do some sort of heavy bilateral work, some sort of heavy unilateral work, and then some accessory lifts to go along with those each day that we train. And so obviously, as we progress, we're going to add some different variety to the exercises. Okay, so Lauren, coming back out, grab the 20s, and then just set them down right in the middle there. So first thing Lauren's going to do is do actually a good morning to warm up her form for an RDL. So hands are behind the head, that's good. She's pushing her hips backwards. Do you feel hamstrings working here?
Yeah, I do.
Good. Some of our athletes do like a good 10 of these. Some of our athletes have a hard time hinging at the hips, meaning they don't get their hamstrings and their glutes properly loading. For those kids, we sometimes have them stand by a wall and tell them, push your butt to the wall. Or you can have them stand by a desk and say, okay, close the desk, the drawer with your butt. Something like that. Sometimes we'll use dowels and help them with that. Okay, grab your 20, sir. All right, show us 10 good RDLs, Lauren. Good. So with a couple cues with her RDLs, Lauren traditionally does a barbell RDL because she is going to be a college athlete very soon. So this is a little light for her, but a few things we cue. Pulling the shoulders back together. Good. Keeping that there. If we had a barbell, we'll have her push the barbell against her legs first to get her lats engaged, and then pushes back. So if you look closely, we got the hamstrings shaking a little bit. That's good. After you've done 10, you can set those down and rest for a second. Lots of variation with our bilateral RDLs, right? So we could progress her to a unilateral RDL, which she's not going to do today. but we could do a staggered RDL. So grab those again. Technically a bilateral lift, but she's putting more emphasis on one leg than the other. So sometimes we'll have them staggered. We say usually bring that left foot a little bit farther forward. Good. Left foot will be midway in between your other foot. She's still doing the same principle. She's pushing her hips back. That's good. Still feel your hamstrings?
Yeah.
Which hamstring do you feel like is working more?
My right one.
Good. Okay, so same principle. She does, let's say, 6 there, then she's going to switch legs and do the other leg. Good. She's still hinging at her hips. That's going to be better. Do a couple more so you're even. So with our programming, sometimes we will pair exercises together. Okay, so Lauren may be doing an RDL, and then she will pair it with some accessory work, meaning today we're doing a hamstring curl here. So she's going to lay on her back. So she's going to start both legs on here. Put more calves on there to start, Lauren. A lot of athletes will be not very stable in this position. She's going to put her calves on there. She's going to lift her hips up. Keep both of them on there to start. So once she's stable here, then she can, go elite level there. Good. And she's going to curl heel to her butt. Okay, so let's do like 8, and then she could go 8 on the other side. So with our programming, we generally pair a bilateral exercise with an accessory work. Here is a single leg, or a unilateral exercise. And Lauren is probably going to do 4 or 5 sets of this because she's progressed, and that's where she's at in her training program. With our young athletes, let's say our 10-year-olds or 12-year-olds, or just an athlete who's new to training, we may be doing fewer sets in a little bit higher rep ratio so that we are ingraining the movement pattern. What are we going to now? Reverse lunges. Okay, so we did bilateral with an accessory. Now she is going to do more of a lunge variation, a unilateral exercise. And she's going to do a reverse lunge. One of our favorite exercises at our gym. We use a barbell, traditionally. Sometimes a front rack hold, meaning it's in the front squat position. Sometimes on our backs. So when Lauren's going here, we're going to pay attention to her knees. We're going to make sure she is keeping knee in line with her second toe. Okay, elbows could be in a little bit more. Good. That's good. A few things to pay attention to here is that we don't want her ribs flaring too much. Volleyball players tend to be in this position where ribs are flared. We want to cue ribs stay down, kind of like she's giving herself a 6-pack while she's doing it. Are you getting tired, Lauren?
A little bit.
Okay, let's do one more each leg. Oh, she's got more in her. Good. Very good. Set those down. Grab some water. So with our lower body strength, same concept. With programming, we want to look at what we can do for bilateral, what we can do unilateral, and then what accessory work we as coaches think are going to benefit our athletes. So moving on to a little upper body strength. We're going to start with bilateral, move into unilateral, and then add some accessory. So today she's going to do bent over rows with 2 arms. Where she's at in her training program, she has, what month is this? She has 3 weeks before she starts college. Okay, so we have 3 weeks to prepare her for her college volleyball program. And so one of the elements that they do in their program is a bent over row. And so she's going to do a bilateral bent over row here. She's also going to do a unilateral exercise. She's going to do a single arm floor press. Okay, we're not using a bench today, so we are going to actually have her on the floor doing a floor press. And then she's going to do some accessory work, because like we said, volleyball, lots of shoulder issues with volleyball players, and so we are going to do something called a wall angel. Ready, Lauren?
Yes.
All right, so grab those dumbbells again. She is going to do a bent over row, so that's great. Same positioning as we just taught her with her RDL. Hips are pushed back. Should feel a little bit of not a pull, but she should feel her hamstrings activated. Good, she's going to pause for 1 second at the top. We're going to cue her to squeeze here. That's good, and then go. Perfect. Lauren looks pretty good, huh? That's good. Give me 3 more of those. Okay, so here she is doing a bent over row. You can set those down. We may be supersetting this with a wall angel. Okay, so she's going to go to her wall. She's going to think straight line from elbow to elbow, and we're going to try to get most elements of her body flat against the wall. Then she's just going to rotate around the elbow, trying to get her wrist flat. So if you pause at the top there, Lauren. Okay, so you see she can get her wrist flat, but what's happening here? Rib cage is flaring a little bit. Okay, so lots of cues here to think of. Keep going there. She's going to work through this motion. Where do you feel this, Lauren?
In my shoulders and even in my back, trying to keep it flat.
Good. So she's going to do 8 to 10 on this side, and then we're going to go over to her left side. This is a variation to what some coaches do, a wall slide, but it's taking into account that she's playing a unilateral sport. She is in this motion a lot, so we're doing a single arm at a time. Good. So from there, we might go back to bent over rows. She's going to do one more set of those. Let's do 8 more. So like I said, in Lauren's program, she's probably doing 3 to 5 sets of this. With our younger athletes, we might be teaching this a little bit differently. We might be having them do something like a TRX row or doing a single arm dumbbell row and teaching some proper positioning. That's good. You can set those down. So accessory work, bilateral, and then our unilateral work. So she's going to lay on the ground here. Let's move one over. Okay, we call this a floor press. A good teaching point to teach you how to do a single arm bench press or teaching you how to bench, because you're going to have more control in this position. Less range of motion, which is not a bad thing where Lauren's at in her program. So the thing is, her feet are flat on the ground, back is flat. She's letting her tricep come touch the ground, and then she's pressing from there. A great exercise for our younger athletes who don't have the control yet to control a dumbbell. It gets all wobbly. So it's a good variation for those kids. Let's do our left arm. So like I said, lots of variations for a bench press or our unilateral work. There's lots of different reasons why to do unilateral work and lots of things we can do for it. How are we feeling there? Good. Yeah? Good. All right, there she goes. Okay, grab a drink of water real fast again, Lauren. So moving on to our last strength principle, we have our core strength. So core strength, I feel like people could present for hours about core strength too. Lots of different boats of ideas and thoughts on how you should be training your core. The important thing to us as strength coaches is that we look at anti-flexion, anti-extension, and anti-rotation. So if you look at your slide, we have some examples of anti-flexion. When you think about someone sitting at their desk all day and they're hunched forward, these are the people that are in flexion all the time. Okay? They're like the computer guys. Our extension athletes are our volleyball players or other athletes who are in this position a lot. Okay? And so when we're doing these core exercises, we want to kind of pick from each one of these and use those in our training program. So we're going to go over a slider reach today. We're going to go over, we call it a stability ball, stir the pot, and then we're going to go over an anti-rotation exercise. You ready, Lauren? Okay, grab just one of those yellow sliders. Good. At our gym, we use furniture movers because they are not very expensive. You can buy them at a pack from Home Depot. These ones are great from Skills, but we are on a budget. So anyway, Lauren is going to do a slider reach. Okay, if you notice, we're going to look at making sure her spine stays neutral here. Her hips aren't sagging. Let's say her hip sags like perfect, good. That's not good, right? Us as coaches can cue her, getting her hips even here. A lot of athletes won't even feel it while they're doing it. This exercise is not so easy. Okay, Lauren, rest for a second. Move it to your other hand here. Okay, so lots of variations to this. She's going to show you an advanced method. It's not easy. So let's give her a little bit of sympathy here. That's great. Okay, so she's going to try to bend this arm. She's trying to reach as far as she can. Good. Trying not to let her hips sag too much. That's great. Good, rest. Did you breathe at all?
A little bit.
Okay, so that is a slider reach. So moving on to an anti-extension exercise. She's going to do a stability ball, stir the pot. We tell our athletes, forearm start on the ball, same positioning here, toes are dug into the ground, and she's doing either small circles for our athletes who can't do this very well, or larger circles. This is not an easy exercise for our young athletes. If you take a young athlete and do this, most of them are going to fall over sideways and roll around. Lauren is advanced, so she does this very well. Good, rest for a second. Okay, we can also add in a reach to that. So she's stirring, but this time she's going to reach out as far as she can. Perfect. Where do you feel this, Lauren?
In my core.
Perfect. Some athletes will get back sagging. She's not going to demonstrate that because we don't want to put her in that position, but we can cue them out of that positioning. Okay, good job, Lauren. You can kick that over here. Our last one we're going to do is our anti-rotation. So she's going to kneel. We cue outside knee is up, so it gives her a little bit more stability through that. The butt cheek of the knee that's down, she's going to be squeezing it. She's going to keep it tight. That's going to give her a little bit of stability. Okay, I'm going to pull her this way. Lauren is strong, so I'm going to give her some fluctuating resistance here. Good. If you can see her core and her butt shaking a little bit. That's good. That's what we want. Some athletes get a little tired and take those hands a little higher. Perfect. And then push away from me. Good, and rest. We tend to do 15, 20 seconds, somewhere in that ratio. And then we'll do our other side. Good. So as you can see, same thing. Left butt cheek turned on. Core is here. We're resisting rotation through her trunk. Let's give her 5 more seconds. Good. And rest. Nice job, Lauren. So Lauren is not going to do any conditioning today because we came in the other day and filmed her doing a few things. And so she's going to be done with us today.
Thank you.
Great job, Lauren. So conditioning, like I said, Lauren did this the other day. A very important part of our training. The most important part is that we look at our athletes' demand of their sport and then decide what we are going to do for their conditioning. So conditioning is also known as, in some areas, energy system development, metabolic conditioning, or endurance. The important part to remember as a coach is that we are trying to enhance our athletes' recovery. We want them to be able to play a point and recover quickly enough that they can do another point and play at still a high level. The benefits of conditioning are increased muscle capitalization, increased phosphocreatine energy system recovery, and then shorter recovery times. So if you take a look at this little diagram on your slide, our sports can range from more of our strength power sports like our football, our baseball, volleyball would be more geared towards strength and power, to our metabolic endurance sports like soccer and rugby and basketball and lacrosse, somewhere in the middle. So if you can check out Lauren on your slide, she's doing a little bit of bike conditioning. So Lauren did a great job. We were working for 15-second intervals. We talked about her sport before, volleyball. 15 seconds, a very common time where she is active in her sport and then recovering after that. She's doing a pretty maximal sprint here. We turned the resistance up quite a bit. You have lots of options with conditioning. The biggest thing I want you to think about with conditioning is that it does not have to be about running. A lot of strength coaches think conditioning and you just run, where we have lots of options for conditioning. So you see Lauren's doing the bike. She could be doing rope intervals with the battle ropes. She could be doing interval sprints, but not something that we have to program. Or she'd be doing something like a sled push or pull. Something that's going to get her heart rate up, work her energy systems that we're trying to, and then allow her to recover. So in summary, we looked at a lot of elements of training youth athletes. Our goal as strength coaches or sports performance coaches is to take an athlete from whatever their age they're at and progress them to where they want to be, whether that be play on their junior high soccer team or whether that play Division I basketball in college. Our goal as a strength coach is to help them make a structured program for them to help them reach their goals. And so we need to help them set short-term and long-term goals. So within that, we need to think, we're developing them as athletes. And so we want to make sure we're training them in multi-directions, linear, lateral, transverse plane, rotational, and then implementing things into our program, their strength, their power, their speed, and their endurance that are going to progress them for life as athletes. So Jackie.
Great job. Thank you very much. We do have some time for questions. As we get to those questions, just want to give a shout out to Lauren, who is recovering on the other side over here. She did a great job, and that was a workout. She was working hard. So good job, Lauren. And we have a lot of props for her coming up. So you guys recognize she's, like we mentioned, she is a youth athlete who is going on to her college career as a volleyball player. So she's been working with Melissa for how long?
Like 4 years,
4 years. So this is the process that these youth athletes will go through, beginning with you guys as a freshman and then working through and gaining a volleyball scholarship. So this is exactly what we hope to see with hopefully a lot of the athletes that you guys are working with. So thank you to both of you guys for being here today. So a lot of questions are coming in, and just a reminder, you can type those questions in on your chat box, which is on the right-hand side of your screen. So a couple of things that we did notice, and I'll just talk about Lauren because she was working with us today. You mentioned the knee variation. So at what point in her programming or programming for an athlete that has that, do you address something like that?
We address something like that pretty much immediately in the program. Our athletes come in, do an evaluation, and so we evaluate, obviously their performance tests, their speed and their power, so we test their vertical and their broad jump, but we also do a movement screen and see how they're moving. And so if we get athletes who are doing a single leg squat and getting a lot of this in, we don't say, hey, you're going to tear your ACL. It's more like, hey, your glutes, your hamstrings might be weak. It's things we're going to address in the program, and we start doing that immediately.
Okay. So as you know those things, and you've known those things about Lauren, as we used her as our athlete today, you cued her just a little bit, but maybe talk about some of the cues that you can use for that specific issue. We had a lot of people comment that they have athletes like that.
So cueing sometimes doesn't work as well because the athlete can feel it, but they're just like, okay, push it out. So obviously we can cue it with their takeoff and landing and when they're in a lunge. Sometimes we'll actually add resistance to it. So imagine I'm taking a resistance band around her knee, pulling her into more of that positioning and making her push away from it so that it's actually making her, she can feel it, she can see it. I'm exaggerating her valgus, and then she pushes out away from it, which has helped us a lot.
Great. So more of a kinesthetic cue so that she can actually feel that action. Good. So a few of the things that we talked about today, another question coming in, we talked about the lower body strength, upper body strength, and then core strength. And maybe just a question for you, how you guys do your programming. Is that a typical order for the workout, or how do you program all three of those? Do you program all three of those all at the same time? How does that usually work?
Yep, we generally program lower body first, followed by upper body and core. Sometimes we will, use an upper body and a lower body exercise together at the start of the workout, but it depends on their training program. So we have some, professional baseball players who are doing only upper body for a day. Our younger kids aren't doing only upper body or only lower body for the most part. And so we tend to program, so we do lower body, upper body, and then core.
Great. Okay, perfect. So that was kind of a good example today of what a full workout would really look like for an athlete like Lauren, who's a volleyball player, to kind of put all those components together.
Exactly.
Great. Okay, so a little bit about working with this group. We are talking about youth athletes, this sort of pre-collegiate age group. Talk a little bit about how you work with them as far as the rapport. We've in other conversations that you
Yeah.
and I have had, we've talked a little bit about rapport, but this is a different type of client. It's not your professional athlete, right? So anything that you would want to mention about how to work with this type of athlete?
Huh. Well, they're very interesting. Seems like there's something different every time they come in.
Yeah.
I think the biggest thing is to care about their lives, which is why I chose doing junior high and high school athletes instead of college athletes. College athletes are kind of in their own world sometimes, and like everything's about them, where junior high and high school kids, you have this opportunity to influence them for the rest of their lives. And so with our kids, they like know we care. We go to different sporting events. Like I love going to high school volleyball games or basketball games and watch some of our guys play basketball or girls play volleyball and like see how they are on the courts. And so I think for us, it's just showing that we care about them. The rapport obviously doesn't help if you are an athlete, we're a former athlete, or it doesn't hurt, but you don't have to be a former athlete by any means.
Yeah, good. So just kind of understanding where they're coming from and what they're doing in their regular life is a big part of that.
Yep.
Yeah. So we were working one-on-one with our athlete today. How do you implement some of these things with groups? I know that you also work with groups, and if you're working with a whole volleyball team, let's say for example with Lauren's team, how would you implement some of this, or how would you maybe change the workout to implement with a youth group?
We actually don't change it a whole lot. Maybe some of the exercises are a little bit simpler.
Okay.
Lauren did fairly simple exercises today. But in general, in a group setting, I don't do many advanced moves because I am not comfortable, even in a group of 6 athletes, having my athletes do some sort of like Olympic lifting, or like they still lift heavy, but we structure it a little bit different. So let's say I have 6 athletes at one time. We might have 2 sets of athletes like squatting heavy, and then the other one's doing movements that I feel are very simple that they can't injure themselves, like a hamstring curl or a simple box jump, not with these boxes, but with like a foamy one.
Yeah.
So that I can watch a couple athletes at a time and then have them doing accessory work or, not less important, but less dangerous movements.
Okay, great. Yeah, so just to be able to feel, like you said, feel comfortable as the coach, that you can keep an eye on everybody and that they also feel comfortable to do the movements themselves.
Yep.
Right, great. So we do have a lot of questions and comments still coming in, but if you would like to keep the conversation going with Melissa today, we do have a Facebook chat that is going on right now. If you go to our ACE Facebook page, there is a chat, and you can continue to type questions there, and Melissa will be visiting that for the next couple of days just to say hi and answer your questions about anything that was in the presentation today. So one thing that people had mentioned in here was a couple of the other exercises. You guys saw on your slide that Lauren demonstrated the exercises that were highlighted in red. So if you have questions about any of the other exercises that we didn't demonstrate today, feel free and comment about those or ask if you need any specifics about those exercises. So reminder, if you are, I'll take this from you. Reminder, if you are watching and viewing today, you are watching for free. So again, thanks for joining us. This presentation will be live for the next few days perhaps, and so if you would like to replay this again and just review the information, feel free to use this link again for the next day or so. But if you would like to receive CECs for today's presentation, use the link that is below on the description, or you can use the link that's provided on the screen, acefitness.org/past-webinars, and you will be able to purchase the quiz for today's presentation, and once you pass that quiz, your 0.1 CECs will go into your My ACE account. So thank you again for joining us. If you'd like to join us next month, we have another great live presentation coming up with our presenter, Justin Robinson, who is a strength and conditioning coach as well as a registered dietitian. And he is going to be talking about integrated exercise implementation, and that is using our ACE IFT model. So a lot of great information on that coming up next month. And as a reminder, just to connect with us a lot of different ways. Once again, you can look on our Facebook page for that chat that's going on with Melissa for the next couple of days. Also visit us on our YouTube, Instagram, LinkedIn, Pinterest pages as well. Thank you again for joining us for today's presentation. Thank you to Melissa and to Lauren for their participation and giving us all that great information about training youth athletes. Thanks again for joining us. Have a healthy day.